America has many quiet heroes, some of whom protect the Department of Energy's Y-12 plant in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. These brave men are the elite Special Response Team. They are some of the best trained and the best equipped forces protecting America's nuclear weapons and material. They do so with deadly force if necessary. These elite special response teams are filled with professionals that have served in the military and law enforcement. It's not uncommon to find former Marines, Rangers, Special Forces, and police veterans serving in various positions within the teams. They use words like honor, code, and loyalty. They use these words as the backbone of a life spent defending something. They live up to their words. They walk their talk. One of these quiet heroes is Vinny Cinelli, who, while riding his motorcycle one cold March day in broad daylight, was run down by a hit-and-run driver who does not live a life of honor, code, and loyalty. Vinny Cinelli was severely injured, but miraculously recovered. Today, the Insider Exclusive is here to tell his story. It's the true story of the magnificent courage of Vinny Cinelli and how his lawyer, Bruce Fox, of the law firm of Fox and Farley in Clinton, Tennessee, got justice for Vinny. And because of Bruce's extraordinary success in the courtroom, he has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best plaintiff trial lawyers in Tennessee and the nation. It is said that the true measure of any man is not how they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but how they stand in moments of challenge and controversy. Both Bruce and Vinny have stood in those moments of challenge and controversy, and that's why the Insider Exclusive salutes both of these quiet American heroes. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive live from Clinton, Tennessee at the law firm of Fox and Farley. It is my great pleasure to introduce Bruce Fox of the law firm of Fox and Farley. Welcome to the show, Bruce.
Steve, it's a pleasure to be here.
We're here to discuss Vinny Cinelli's case. Tell us what happened.
Unbelievable. Vinny Cinelli, in 31 years of practice, is one of my favorite clients. He's my hero. He was a pro-force guard at the plants in Oak Ridge, an elite response team. If there was a terrorist attempt on those plants or facilities here, he was on the team that would have responded. He was a motorcycle rider, and on a beautiful spring afternoon in March of 2008, he was riding on Middlebrook Pike, approached an intersection, had a green light, was following another vehicle that went through just ahead of him. A nice lady named Joella Cobb driving that vehicle. Happened to look in her rear view mirror and see that an opposing driver coming the opposite direction ignored the light, came into the intersection and struck Mr. Cinelli, struck Vinny just on the left side of his motorcycle, propelled him into the air, knocked his motorcycle 150 feet across the intersection. Vinny and the motorcycle ended up on a curb next to a telephone pole. Catastrophic injuries. Well, the most catastrophic part of his injury was it traumatically amputated his leg at the knee on his left leg. Broke his back in 4 places, broke his neck. It really was touch and go there at the scene. He was lucky to have survived.
I understand there are some interesting facts about the case. It was a hit-and-run driver case.
That's correct. He, according to eyewitnesses, looked at Mr. Cinelli there on the street and calmly drove away.
Fortunately, we have the video deposition of Howard Miller, who was the hit-and-run driver, with him pleading the fifth, denying any responsibility. Let's go to that right now.
You pulled up there and had the green ball at the intersection.
Well, here I think I have to take the fifth on this.
Okay. Did you see Mr. Cinelli approaching on his motorcycle?
No.
Did you see any other traffic approaching the intersection of Van Osdale and Middlebrook, eastbound on Middlebrook?
No. There was a large white American sedan.
Okay. Was it blocking your view?
It was partially blocking my view.
Okay. What did you do next?
Well, I have to invoke the fifth.
Do you know where the impact took place between your vehicle and Mr. Cinelli's vehicle?
The impact was on the extreme left front point of my car at the parking lot.
Do you know where relative to the eastbound lanes of Middlebrook the impact took place?
I can't answer that.
Because you don't know, or you're asserting your rights under the Fifth Amendment?
The Fifth Amendment.
I'm just confused, Mr. Miller, and I need your help to understand. If you were sitting in the turn lane and Mr. Cinelli came over there and impacted your vehicle and you're still sitting there, why were you worried about other vehicles coming if you had not entered the intersection?
Well, I had already been hit once, and I was trying to move out of the way.
Did you see what happened to Mr. Cinelli and his motorcycle after impact?
No, I did not.
Didn't look over there.
I looked back, and I did not see where he went.
Where were you when you looked back?
I was moving through the intersection. I looked over my shoulder to the left as I pulled through the intersection.
And you didn't see Mr. Cinelli?
No, sir, I did not.
You didn't see his motorcycle sliding down Middlebrook?
No, I
You
did
didn't see
not.
him sliding down Middlebrook?
No.
Before we show the video deposition of Vicky Cockrell, tell us a little bit about Vicky.
A true Good Samaritan. Nice lady. I credit her with saving Vinny. She sees this accident unfold, could have sat in her vehicle, could have gone on through the light when it turned green, but she elected to leave her van there in the middle of the street and run to Vinny's side and render aid and assistance to him, kept him conscious. She realized early on, after talking with her, the severity of his injuries and was very fearful that he would not survive.
Let's go to that deposition right now.
I saw him hit Vincent. Vincent saw it getting ready to come because his leg came out. I don't know how to describe this. His leg came out. He hit him. Vincent went airborne. The motorcycle on him actually went airborne. Vincent was laying on the ground and the motorcycle was laying up this way.
Anything that Mr. Cinelli did to cause this accident or contribute to it?
No, sir.
Did you see Mr. Cinelli do anything wrong to cause this accident?
No, sir. I proceeded to look down at him and his leg was completely crushed. There was no bone. There was no muscle. It was just basically fat and blood there. He kept telling me he needed to move. I kept telling him he couldn't. So I had a hold of his hand. I told him, I said, you know, he kept talking about how painful it was. And I said, no matter how much it hurts, squeeze my hand and you keep talking to me.
We also have a video deposition of Officer Sams, who was the chief investigator in this case. But before we go there, tell us a little bit about the officer.
Well, as you've just described, he was a motorcycle officer, but he also was the chief investigator on this case. Along with some leads that came to him over the next few days, he finally identified Mr. Miller as the person driving the hit-and-run vehicle.
Yes.
Went to his home, examined the vehicle that was still sitting there in the driveway and on its front bumper and in the area that was damaged. Unfortunately, there was still bone particles, tissue, blood.
That was on the front bumper.
On the front bumper, clearly
Yeah.
visible, had not been cleaned off, had been no attempt to hide it. Mr. Miller refused to come to the door when the police went there, and they went with a full squadron of 6 or 8 motorcycle officers along with 3 or 4 patrol cars. He wouldn't answer the door, would not respond, but ultimately they were able to arrest the man and charge him with this felony hit and run. Do you recall what he told the interviewer about how the accident happened?
Yes, I think he was telling the interviewer that he was actually in his turn lane, that he hadn't even turned yet, but there was a truck there hiding his view and he kept trying to pull out just a little bit so he could see around that truck, and supposedly the motorcycle come over and hit him in the front.
Is that version of the accident consistent with what your investigation revealed?
No, it is not.
How does it differ from what your investigation revealed?
Because if that was true, what he said, that impact would be straight on the front end to the right, this front end is on, this impact happened to the left of his vehicle. The damage is on the left of his vehicle where he was turning across the lanes of Middlebrook Pike. eastbound, striking the motorcycle and the left side of the motorcycle driver's left leg.
What are the elements that stand out most in your mind about this case?
What stood out the most in my mind was, number one, his resilience and his character. Of course, the eyewitnesses and the Good Samaritans and the care they had rendered, but Mr. Miller leaving the scene and in complete denial, as you saw in his deposition, that this was his fault, that he had any responsibility or culpability in this accident. It made it doubly difficult to investigate the case because there was an ongoing felony investigation and arrest, and the police officers were not allowed to disclose their investigative materials to me until I went to the Attorney General's office in Knoxville, and he kindly gave me permission to talk with the officers, instructed them to give me the material and help me pursue this case for Vinny.
Let's go meet Vinny. We'll bring him on right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Vinny Cinelli. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Steve. Nice to meet you.
You went through a horrendous experience. I saw the medical charts. I watched, and we have just watched Vicky Cockrell's testimony as to what actually happened. Take us back to that day. You were riding through the intersection.
Yeah, I'd ridden my motorcycle to work that day. It was like the first nice day of spring. Coming back from work, approaching an intersection, light was green. Just out of nowhere, there was just a blur to my left, and then impact. I remember I struck a telephone pole.
How fast were you going?
Maybe 35. I remember laying there after the impact, and people started gathering around me that were at the intersection in their vehicles. I could hear them talking. I knew I was in bad shape. I mean, I could tell I was laying on my left side, and I realized that my left foot was pointing directly behind me, and I could feel air blowing in my leg. And I started losing consciousness, so I kind of figured that was it. I can hear the witnesses talking on their cell phones, telling 911, you better hurry up, he's bleeding out, he's not going to make it. I remember saying to myself, I made my peace with God right there. I was like, this is it, I'm not going to make it out of this one. I've had accidents before, and you always end up with a broken leg or a broken hand or something, but this one kind of struck me as being the final count. Came to at UT Hospital a couple days later. I was on a ventilator. I remember hearing before I blacked out that the guy that hit me had left the scene, and that just struck me as odd. I was like, man, I'm going to die here, and the guy just left me here. When they took me off the ventilator at UT, the forensics team for Knoxville Police Department had came in, and when they removed the ventilator, they had swabbed my mouth for a DNA match. When they arrested the operator of the vehicle, they had apparently taken a piece of my left leg off the front of his car.
Right.
And they swabbed my mouth. They did get the 100% DNA match. The guy is still in denial, although there was a bunch of witnesses. One that actually knew the gentleman that hit me. And that was it. I mean, I'd lost my leg, fractured L1 through 5 and C3.
Mm-hmm.
Got 10 units of blood. Got out of the hospital 2 weeks later and went back to work 4 months after that.
Now, as we saw in Vicky Cockrell's deposition, do you remember her at the scene of the accident holding your hand?
Vaguely. I had recently met one other witness that was at the scene, Joella Cobb.
Mm-hmm.
It was at the, not the sentencing hearing, but the guy that hit me decided to plead guilty, and she was in the courtroom that day. That's the first time I made eye contact with any of the witnesses, and
Right.
It was very emotional.
What did she say? What did you and her talk about?
Well, there was some crying, and then it was just, rehashing the accident and her telling me, giving me her account of what she had seen,
Yeah.
which of course was kind of rough for me because it just brought me right back through it,
Right.
and it's kind of hard to deal with. The hardest thing to deal with is the fact that the gentleman that did it is in total denial. He's
Yeah.
a 63-year-old man or thereabouts that has yet to learn responsibility for his actions. Something that we normally learn early in life, this
Yes.
gentleman's yet to come face to face with. It would help me bring closure to it if he was to, in fact, just say, I'm sorry, it was an accident. and accidents do just happen. But when you leave an accident scene, you just turned it into a criminal act.
Right.
And, you know, it's just, that's what I'm dealing with right now.
And the amazing thing, you told me before the show that when you went to the sentencing hearing, you were all prepared to do what?
I was hoping they had upgraded this charge from a misdemeanor to a Class C felony in the state of Tennessee, reckless endangerment. I was hoping he would get some time. I had no delusions of grandeur. I know the guy's not going to go to prison. I know, you know, I know how the system works.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see justice be done. And I got to the courtroom and they told me they had reached an agreement. He was going to get probation for his plea of guilty. And I thought that was absurd and that wasn't going to work. I requested to speak to the assistant district attorney for Knoxville, telling him I wished to speak to the judge. Mm-hmm. The judge allowed me to speak in open court. I showed her my leg with Mr. Miller seated right beside me. Not to indicate Bruce Fox as Mr. Miller. I know I reached that way. This is my attorney.
Yeah.
Mr. Miller was beside me in the courtroom, and I just told the judge that he's admitting his guilt based on this probation agreement.
Right.
Who wouldn't?
Sure.
You know, each day I have to live with the results of his negligence. And I will have to live with that results for the rest of my life. I'm an amputee now, and that's the reality of it all. I've had to learn how to pick up the pieces and carry on. What has this guy paid? What has he?
Right.
Civilly, nothing, because your insurance pays for that. Criminally, nothing, because he's being offered probation. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely crazy. When people go to jails for 6 months for fraudulent checks, mm-hmm. you can run somebody down, leave the accident scene and almost kill them and just get probation. It's absurd. So I'm pushing that issue right now, and the judge is listening to it, and she's postponed sentencing.
Right. You also mentioned that had he said to you,
the night before the court date, which was a Sunday night, court was the following Monday, I told myself I would bring closure to this entire incident tomorrow if he just offers his hand, says, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake, please forgive me." And that would have done it. But he's not about any of that.
Yeah. You know, the amazing thing, Bruce, is you've got eyewitnesses all over the place. You've got the police who have analyzed this, you know, like we saw with Officer Sams, very carefully, stating without doubt that Mr. Miller did this. He was hit and run. He's the one who caused the accident. It really kind of must guile you or anyone to look at the facts and have this guy not own up to them.
Unbelievable that he's still in denial, will not accept responsibility for his own actions.
Mm-hmm.
It's unquestionable that he did it, that he ran the red light according to every witness, to the police investigation. The forensic evidence clearly establishes it was his car that struck Vinny, and to this day Mr. Miller has yet to accept that responsibility, and a simple apology to Vinny would be worth more than anything he received in the civil suit.
Right. When Vinny first came into the office here, you said, "Here's my favorite client."
My hero.
Why is that?
Well, he's an inspiration. He's overcome adversity. Like you said, back at work in 4 months, he was broke up from head to toe. When I met him in the hospital, he was black. From here to here on this side, black. His leg was gone, and he went back to work in 4 months. He told me that day, "I'm going to go back and be a pro force guard. I can do it. I will learn to run again." And that's been his attitude from day one.
You know, you, before this accident, were you still are a gifted athlete. You were very sports-minded. In your mind, what went through your mind as you had to rehabilitate yourself and go forward?
Small hurdles. I mean, dealing with an amputation, I don't have a knee, a left knee, and you don't realize just how important that one part of your body is. I mean, now I deal with amputees. We have an amputee clinic at UT once a month, and sometimes the prosthetic company will have me meet with new amputees in the hospital and just make sure they keep their spirits up, try to give them a, insight to what they're going to have ahead of them. you know, show them what the prosthesis looks like, what they can expect, how to try to move on. Maintain that mental mindset that you can't let this get you down. You can't, yeah, it's terrible. You've been dealt a very lousy hand, but you have to play that hand. You can't just cash your chips in and get out of the game. You've got to stay in there.
Now, you're still with the Y-12 Protection Force, aren't you?
Correct.
And what do you do with them now?
Still employed with the primary security contractor for Oak Ridge in a different capacity. I'm in performance testing now, which is the group that validates and certifies the security forces and systems out there. So they've been good, you know.
And you're still active, doing a lot of the things
I
you
had
used to do.
I had to relinquish my position on the special response team out there because I couldn't make the run time. It's a timed run, sprint, and everything else. So I was happy to be able to maintain some type of job out there. So.
Well, you know what they say, the adversity builds character.
It does.
Doesn't it? And you live it every day, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, again, that's what I tried to convey to the judge. Every day I have to deal with, it's not so much the fact that I'm an amputee, it's the fact that he made me an amputee.
Yeah.
And it's just part of dealing with it.
We're going to bring on a couple of your co-workers and friends here in a minute. And they can tell what an inspiration that you are to them and to everybody. And we're going to do that right now. I'm very pleased to introduce Bobby Parker, Vinny's good friend as well as his co-worker. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about when you worked with Vinny. You were hired in together, weren't you?
Yes.
Okay. So you've worked with him for a number of years.
Yeah.
When this accident happened, what were your immediate thoughts?
Well, I was actually at work when it happened. So, you know, they notified me and I left immediately to go to the emergency room.
Yeah.
You know, some of the guys were asking me because they knew we were best friends in the hallway about it. You know, did he really lose his leg? I'm thinking, you know, when you work with 400 people, you know, it's easy for rumors to get started very easily. And I'm like, no. And then our chief calls me in there, and he's like, you need to go now. So that's when I went and found out about it. I've said, you know, 100 times, if something like that did happen to me, I'd hope I would have the drive that he's got to come back from it like he has.
And at work now, it's kind of inspirational, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people look up to him.
That's good. That's good. Well, listen, he's shaking his head over there. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show.
Okay.
And thanks for your contribution, and thanks for being his friend. I'm very pleased to introduce another one of Vinny's friends, Greg Day, and a coworker, right?
Oh, yeah.
You came in about the same time, 8 years ago at Y-12, right?
Correct.
And tell us your thoughts when you found out that Vinny had had this horrible accident.
Well, at first, because we played mean jokes on each other. And at first, I thought it was a joke. One of our supervisors from work had called and told me, and I hung up the phone at first. I told my wife.
They told those kind of jokes at work?
Well, we do.
Beyond it.
We've done some bad stuff probably.
Yeah.
But you know, I tell my wife, you know what he just told me, and then it hit me. I had to call him back and ask him. I said, look, I said, if this is a joke, you know, I need to stop. And from then on, it was hard. It was tough. It's like he's like a brother, and you know, get news like that, and
Right.
it's
As he's recovered, come back to work, he serves kind of as an inspiration to everybody, doesn't he?
oh yeah.
Doesn't give up, right?
No, that's one thing he won't do.
If you could say one thing to people who have recently suffered the same kind of disability as you, what is the one thing that you would recommend to push them forward?
Better things lie ahead. I mean, you're in a low spot right now. So think about it. It's not going to get any lower. Yeah, there's better stuff beyond that. So just pick yourself up and keep going. I mean, You know, you've got to keep going on. You can't take what you've got at that particular moment and just cash your chips in thinking that's it, man, life is over. It's not over, you're still alive.
Right.
Worst case scenario, you could be dead. You're not. So don't act like you are. I mean, just get up and move on.
Live your life.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Well, I want to thank you very much for being on the program and coming here. And Vinny, I want to thank you very much because you're a hero to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can see why Vinny is your favorite client. What an inspiration.
What an inspiration to everyone who's ever met him
Yeah.
or will ever get to know him. Wonderful man.
You handle a lot of personal injury cases. You know, people that are, you know, little guys that are injured, whether it's at the job or, you know, some other place. What is your criteria when you take on a case? What makes you take on a case?
Well, number one, always the client.
Yeah.
It's just somebody I want to represent that I think has a good case that I want to be involved in seeing justice done for this person.
Yeah.
That's the number one criteria. Obviously, you have to look at the facts of the case and whether or not you can make a case. And then principally after that, you're looking at who's the defendant and what type of recovery can be had on behalf of this person so that some semblance of justice is done here.
Right. There's also an element of a relationship between the lawyer and his client that a lot of people really don't consider, and that is the personal relationship. Because let's face it, they're the ones with the trauma, and they're calling you up, and you have to be empathetic, right, to their feelings and what their financial situation. And tell us a little bit about your relationship with Vinny today.
Well, we're still friends.
Yeah.
You know, I have his cell phone number. He has mine. We call and talk to one another.
Yeah.
As he's told you already, he's a mentor to other amputees.
Yeah.
He's asked me to help several of those amputees with cases they've had. Most have been motorcycle cases like his. We've maintained a friendship. He's my friend. He's not just a client or a prior client. He's now my friend.
Well, we can tell that, and we're certainly glad he found you because you definitely did a good job for him, and you do a lot of good work for a lot of people. And I want to thank you very much for being on the program today.
Thank
Keep
you,
up the
Steve.
good work.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guests and our shows at www.insiderexclusive.com.